Before Tesla became a symbol, before the stock, before the noise, before the mythology, there was silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind where no one is listening. J.B. Straubel lived in that silence. He wasn't born into power. He didn't walk into rooms that opened automatically. He wasn't loud, charismatic, or built for the spotlight. He was an immigrant kid with curiosity, not credentials. More interested in how things worked than how he looked. More comfortable with wires than with people. While others dreamed of fame, JB dreamed of efficiency. How to store energy, how to move it, how to make machines behave like something alive. In the late 1990s, batteries were boring, unsexy, dead ends for ambitious engineers. The smartest people chased software. The money chased the internet. JB chased electrons, not because it was profitable, but because it was necessary. He believed energy was the bottleneck of civilization, not politics, not culture, energy, and nobody cared. He studied at Stanford, but not as a golden child. No hype, no safety net. While others polished resumes, JB built things that barely worked, electric motorcycles that overheated, battery packs that failed, prototypes that scared investors away. He ran out of money more than once, lived cheap, worked obsessively. Rejection became background noise. Then, almost accidentally, he crossed paths with a group trying to build an electric car. Not a concept car, not a PR stunt, a real one. Tesla back then wasn't Tesla. It was fragile, underfunded, laughable to the industry. And JB saw something no one else did. Not a company, a problem worth dying for. He joined not as a star, not as a founder in the headlines, but as the guy who knew batteries better than anyone else in the room. And that made him dangerous. Because while visionaries talk about the future, engineers decide if it survives. Elon Musk would later become the face, the force, the lightning. JB was the backbone, the quiet architecture underneath the ambition. While the world argued about whether electric cars were possible, JB was figuring out how not to burn them down. Lithium-ion cells weren't meant for cars. They were unstable, volatile, one mistake away from catastrophe. JB didn't care. He redesigned how thousands of tiny cells could behave as one system, how software could manage chemistry, how safety could be engineered, not hoped for. Every Tesla battery owes its existence to those early decisions. But no one clapped, no interviews, no magazine covers, just more problems. Production hell, fires, failures, and pressure from every direction. When Tesla nearly died, it wasn't speeches that saved it. It was engineering. And JB was there, absorbing stress, fixing invisible issues, taking blame without taking credit. History remembers heroes who speak. It forgets heroes who build. But this story isn't over, because eventually, even the quiet ones reach a breaking point. As Tesla grew louder, JB grew quieter. Not because he had nothing to say, but because the room no longer rewarded people who spoke carefully. The company was scaling faster than the laws of physics were comfortable with. Deadlines compressed, margins thinned, mistakes became expensive in ways that could not be undone. JB stayed where he always was, inside the machine. While others negotiated, he recalculated. While others promised, he tested. While others fought for control, he fought entropy. Battery packs don't forgive ego. They punish shortcuts. They remember every bad assumption. And Tesla was built on assumptions that needed constant correction. Every time the company pushed range higher, JB worried about heat. Every time cost went down, he worried about failure modes. Every time speed increased, he worried about degradation. This wasn't fear, it was respect. Respect for systems that don't care who you are. Inside Tesla, there were two timelines running in parallel. The public timeline, ambition, disruption, bold claims. And the private one, late nights, spreadsheets soaked in red, test cells exploding behind blast shields. JB lived in the second timeline. He didn't argue in public. He argued with data. And data has no charisma. As Tesla survived its near-death moments and began to rise, something strange happened. The better the company did, the less visible JB became. Not intentionally erased, just naturally overlooked. Because success has a way of simplifying stories. It compresses complexity into faces people can recognize. One hero, one villain, one narrative. And JB didn't fit cleanly into any of those roles. He wasn't trying to dominate the future. He was trying to make it stable. That difference matters. As Tesla's valuation exploded, JB started asking questions no one wanted to hear. About sustainability beyond headlines. About battery supply chains. About recycling. About what happens after the car leaves the showroom. Questions without applause. Eventually, the tension became structural, not personal, structural. Tesla was becoming a company optimized for velocity. JB was optimized for longevity. Both are necessary, but they rarely coexist peacefully. In 2019, JB left Tesla, not in scandal, not in rage, the same way he arrived. To the public, it looked like an exit. To those who understood energy, it looked like a continuation. Because JB wasn't done with batteries. He was just done pretending speed was the same thing as progress. He founded Redwood Materials to solve the part of the story no one wanted to tell. What happens to batteries when the future is done using them? Recycling, recovery, circular systems, unsexy again. Unfunded at first, ignored again. And JB smiled, because he had been here before. Behind the scenes. Before the headlines. Before the world caught up. History might remember Tesla as Elon's vision. But civilization will run on systems built by people like J.B. Straubel, the ones who never needed to be seen, only to be right. And that is the kind of hero the spotlight never finds, unless you know where to look. When J.B. walked away from Tesla, many people assumed the story was over. They thought he had already had his moment. They thought he had already peaked. They thought leaving the loudest company in the room meant stepping into silence. But J.B. didn't leave to disappear. He left to zoom out. Because when you spend years inside a system, you eventually see its shadow. Tesla proved electric cars could win. It did not solve what happens when millions of batteries age, fail, and die. And JB knew something most people didn't want to think about yet. The world was rushing toward electrification without asking where the materials would come from next. Lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper. These were not infinite. They were mined, shipped, processed, wasted. The cleaner future everyone talked about still depended on dirty beginnings. JB couldn't ignore that contradiction. So Redwood Materials was born from a simple, uncomfortable idea. If batteries are the backbone of the future, then waste is the Achilles heel. At first, nobody cared. Recycling wasn't glamorous. Circular economies didn't trend on Twitter. There were no product launches, no countdown clocks, no cheering crowds, just warehouses, machinery, chemistry, time. Investors asked the same question again and again. Where's the upside? Where's the story? Where's the hype? JB answered with equations. Redwood started small, pulling scrap from manufacturing lines, recovering metals at efficiencies that surprised even seasoned chemists. Not 20%, not 50%, over 90. Quietly, JB did what he always did. He made systems behave better than expected. As EV adoption accelerated globally, something shifted. Governments started paying attention, automakers started worrying, supply chains started tightening. Suddenly, the unsexy questions became urgent. Where will the next decade of materials come from? What happens when mining can't scale fast enough? What happens when geopolitics turns raw resources into weapons? Redwood wasn't a backup plan anymore. It was infrastructure. JB didn't need to say, "I told you so." The math said it for him. By the time Redwood scaled, its customers included the very companies racing to dominate the electric future. Tesla, Ford, Volkswagen, Panasonic. The same industry that once overlooked him now depended on what he was building. Not a product, a loop. This is the difference between inventors and architects. Inventors create moments. Architects create permanence. JB was never chasing applause. He was chasing resilience. And resilience doesn't announce itself. It just survives longer than everything else. In interviews, JB still speaks the same way. Measured, technical, grounded, no grand claims, no savior language. Because people who actually build foundations don't talk about changing the world. They talk about failure rates, yield curves, thermal stability, material recovery, boring words, until everything depends on them. Tesla made electric cars inevitable. J.B. Straubel made sure they wouldn't collapse under their own success. That is the story history rarely headlines. But it's the one the future remembers. If you listen carefully, if you look past the spotlight, if you understand that some heroes don't lead from the front, they hold the structure together so everyone else can run. There's a moment in every long build where the builder realizes something quietly terrifying. If this fails, no one will notice right away. And if it succeeds, most people still won't know your name. JB reached that moment at Redwood, because unlike Tesla, success here would be invisible by design. When recycling works, nothing dramatic happens. Factories don't stop, cars don't disappear, headlines don't scream. The system simply doesn't break. And that is the hardest victory to sell. While the world obsessed over range, acceleration, and self-driving promises, JB obsessed over things nobody tweeted about. Purity levels, contamination thresholds, energy intensity per kilogram recovered, process scalability over decades, not quarters. He had learned this lesson early at Tesla. Big visions collapse when small details are ignored. A battery doesn't fail because of one massive flaw. It fails because of 1,000 microscopic compromises. Redwood was built with that memory burned in. JB structured the company differently from Silicon Valley norms. No rush to overpromise, no theatrics for fundraising, no artificial deadlines designed for optics. Instead, there was patience, a dangerous word in a world addicted to speed. He hired engineers who liked quiet progress, chemists who cared more about data than demos, operators who understood that boring consistency beats dramatic pivots. This wasn't a startup chasing disruption. It was a company designed to become boringly essential. Over time, the numbers started speaking louder than JB ever would. Recovered materials rivaled newly mined ones in quality. Costs dropped as processes improved. Environmental impact shrank measurably, not symbolically. Governments noticed, not because Redwood shouted at them, but because supply chains started asking questions politicians couldn't avoid. What happens when lithium prices spike? What happens when mines face backlash? What happens when recycling isn't optional anymore? Suddenly, Redwood wasn't just a company, it was leverage, the kind that shapes policy quietly. The irony wasn't lost on JB. For years he had worked behind Elon Musk, the most visible CEO of his generation. Now he was building something even more influential and even less visible. No cult of personality, no iconic product silhouette, no mythologized origin story. Just throughput, just reliability, just systems that work when everything else is stressed. People sometimes ask JB whether he regretted not being more famous. He never answered directly, because the truth was simple. Fame is loud insurance for fragile ideas. Quiet confidence belongs to ideas that don't need defending. JB had chosen the harder path twice. First, by staying technical when others chased charisma. Second, by building infrastructure when others chased headlines. History doesn't reward those choices immediately, but it rewards them permanently. And that is the final irony of the unseen hero. They don't change the world in ways people notice. They change the rules so the world doesn't collapse when everyone else plays. If Tesla lit the fire, JB Straubel made sure it didn't burn the house down. There's a strange moment that comes late in life, when you look back and realize the decisions that mattered most were the ones nobody applauded. JB Straubel reached that moment without ceremony. No farewell tour, no dramatic exit interviews, no victory laps, just distance. Distance from noise, distance from ego, distance from the need to be seen. By the time Redwood Materials began shaping global conversations around battery supply chains, JB had already accepted a truth most founders never do. You don't have to be the face of a revolution to be responsible for whether it survives. Tesla proved that electric vehicles could exist at scale. Redwood existed to answer a harder question. What happens after scale? After the first wave of excitement fades, after incentives change, after markets mature, after scarcity replaces optimism? This is where most revolutions die, not from opposition, but from neglect. JB understood something early that others learned too late. Technology ages, infrastructure endures. He had seen what happens when a company outruns its foundations, seen production bottlenecks blamed on workers, seen chemistry limitations marketed away, seen optimism stretched past physics. So he chose a different legacy, not acceleration, stability, not disruption, continuity, not heroics, resilience. The world didn't notice when JB stopped appearing next to Elon Musk, but the supply chain did. Automakers began designing vehicles assuming recycled materials would be available. Governments began drafting regulations assuming end-of-life batteries would return value. Investors began thinking in decades instead of product cycles. These weren't press moments. They were structural shifts. And that's how you know something real is happening. The quiet kind of influence doesn't announce itself. It rearranges dependencies. JB never tried to correct the public record about his role at Tesla. He didn't chase recognition for co-founding or for engineering decisions that saved the company in its most fragile years. Because once you've worked close enough to failure, ego feels like a liability. He had learned that early too. When you're broke, unknown, and working 20-hour days, pride doesn't help you solve thermal runaway. Clarity does, humility does. The willingness to admit you don't know yet, but will figure it out, does. That mindset followed him everywhere. It shaped how he built teams, how he chose problems, how he defined success. J.B. Straubel never tried to inspire millions with speeches. He built systems that allowed millions of others to keep moving forward without thinking about them. That is a rarer form of leadership, the kind that doesn't ask for belief, only trust. And if you're listening to this story wondering where you fit into it, here's the part most people miss. Not everyone is meant to stand under the spotlight. Some of the most important work happens behind it. In places where mistakes are expensive, credit is scarce, and patience matters more than confidence. If you're someone who feels invisible right now, working on something unglamorous, solving problems no one wants to talk about, this story isn't telling you to wait your turn. It's telling you this: the future doesn't belong to the loudest voice. It belongs to the person who builds what everyone else depends on and never notices until it's gone. J.B. Straubel didn't chase fame, he built permanence. And long after the headlines move on, that's what remains.